Have you ever just stopped and wondered why we make the choices we do? Especially when money and risk are on the line? For a long, long time, economic theory had a very neat and tidy answer. The only problem was that answer described a species that, well, it wasn't quite us. So today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of how two psychologists took on a 300-year-old idea and gave us a much, much better picture of our own minds. Okay, so check out this quote. When the psychologist Daniel Kahneman first read this sentence from economist Bruno Frey, he was just floored. I mean, to a psychologist, it's totally obvious that people are not always rational. We can be pretty generous sometimes, and our tastes, they change constantly. This one sentence just perfectly captured this massive, massive gap between two completely different ways of looking at human nature. And this gap, it's so big that it basically led to this idea of two different species. On one side, you have the perfectly logical beings from economic models. And on the other side, well, you've got us, humans. And when you put them side by side, the contrast is just stark. Econs, these creatures from the theory books, they're like calculating machines. They are 100% rational. They always, always act in their own self-interest. And they know exactly what they want forever. But humans, well, that's us. We're a bit messier, right? We run on intuition, we actually care about other people, and what sounds great for dinner tonight might sound awful next week. So to figure out how we humans actually tick, Kahneman and Tversky turned to a classic tool from the researcher's toolbox, simple gambles. Things like a 50% chance to win $100. They realized these little choices are kind of like what the fruit fly is to geneticists. They're a perfect, simple model for understanding the huge, complex, and uncertain decisions we have to make every single day. But to really get the revolution they started, we first have to understand the powerful theory they were going up against. And I mean, this was a heavyweight champ of an idea that had dominated the social sciences for centuries. And that theory is called expected utility theory. It's basically a formal logic of how to choose, and the core idea is actually pretty simple. It says that when we make a choice, we don't just look at the dollar amounts. We consider the utility. You can think of it as the psychological satisfaction or maybe even happiness points that those outcomes will give us. Now, here's the absolutely crucial point. Expected utility theory was never meant to be a psychological model of how real people do think. Not at all. It was a rule book, a logical model for how a perfectly rational econ should think to be consistent. The big open question was, do actual humans follow any of these rules? The foundation for this whole theory was laid way back, almost 300 years ago, by a mathematician named Daniel Bernoulli, and he had a truly brilliant insight into the psychology of money. See, Bernoulli's big aha moment was this. The psychological value or utility of money just isn't a straight line. Getting an extra $100 is a huge deal if you're struggling to get by, but if you're a billionaire, you probably wouldn't even notice it. It's this core concept of diminishing marginal utility. And this table just illustrates the point perfectly. Take a look. Going from 1 million to 2 million in wealth, that adds 20 of these utility units. But going from 9 million to 10 million, that's the exact same $1 million gain. It only adds 4 utility units. The more you have, the less of a happiness punch each extra dollar packs. So how does this actually work? Well, if an econ was faced with a choice, they would literally do the math. The utility of the gamble, a 50-50 shot at 1 million or 7 million, is the average of their utilities, which if you calculate it, comes out to 47. But the utility of just taking 4 million for sure, that's 60. And since 60 is bigger than 47, the rational choice is to take the sure thing. And just like that, you've got a really neat explanation for why people are generally risk-averse. It's an elegant theory, right? And it lasted for centuries. But it has a massive, glaring blind spot, something it completely ignores that, as it turns out, is maybe the most important factor of all. To see the problem plain as day, let's meet Jack and Jill. Today, they both have the exact same amount of money, $5 million. But their backstories are completely different. Just yesterday, Jack only had 1 million, while Jill had 9 million. So, according to Bernoulli's theory, which only cares about your current state of wealth, Jack and Jill should have the exact same utility. They should be equally happy. Does that sound right to you? Yeah, of course not. No way. Jack is over the moon. He just made a fortune. Jill is absolutely miserable. She just lost almost half her money. Their happiness isn't about how much they have right now in absolute terms. It's all about the change from where they started, and that's the critical idea, the reference point. Okay, let's hammer this home with one more example. Meet Anthony, who starts with 1 million, and Betty, who starts with 4 million. They get offered the exact same choice. Take a 50-50 gamble where you could end up with either 1 million or 4 million, or just take a guaranteed 2 million. For Anthony, starting at 1 million, that sure thing is a guaranteed doubling of his wealth. That's amazing. But for Betty, starting at 4 million, that exact same choice means losing half her fortune for certain. That's a terrible prospect. For her, the gamble is the only way she might avoid a loss altogether. The numbers on the page are identical, but the way they feel, they're from two different worlds. And this is exactly where the old theory just completely falls apart. It predicts that Anthony and Betty should make the same choice because the final outcomes are the same. But in the real world, Anthony's probably going to play it safe and lock in that gain, while Betty, who's only looking at losses, might just roll the dice. The theory fails because it's missing that all-important reference point. So this huge gaping hole in the old theory is exactly what Kahneman and Tversky set out to fix. They came up with a new theory, one that was designed from the ground up to describe how we humans actually make choices. And they called it prospect theory. First off, it's descriptive. It's all about how we do act, not how we should act. It also explains why we systematically break those old rules of rationality. But most importantly, it adds that crucial idea of a reference point. It says our choices are all about gains and losses, not final states of wealth. And it captures a really deep human truth. We are way more afraid of losses than we are excited by gains of the same size. Losing hurts more than winning feels good. But this brings up a really fascinating question, right? How did such an obvious flaw, the whole missing reference point thing, survive for almost 300 years in plain sight? Well, Kahneman has a great term for it: theory-induced blindness. The idea is that once you accept a theory as the gospel truth, it's like you put on blinders. It becomes incredibly difficult to even notice its flaws because you just give it the benefit of the doubt. So this leaves us with a final thought. This whole idea was revolutionary. It completely changed fields from economics to medicine by giving us a more realistic map of human behavior. But understanding the power of a reference point isn't just for academics. It affects how you feel about your salary, how you negotiate for a car, and how you look at a risky investment. So the next time you've got a big decision to make, just stop and ask yourself, what's my reference point here? And is it making me see this choice as a potential gain or as a terrifying loss?